Why do people learn things? Well, usually it's because they need to. Maybe they're frustrated by something either in themselves or in the world. Maybe a loved one is sick, or maybe they're not making enough money to support their family. But in all these cases, they're entering a survival mode where they're spurred to action. Because when the pain of the status quo hurts more than the pain of discipline, people are capable of extraordinary feats of learning. And yeah, survival mode learning can be effective at times, but you know what? It's not sustainable, and it's not enjoyable. And it can cause people to resent the learning process because they associate it with fight or flight levels of stress. School, for example, talking about my own experience, it was built on that survival mode. My fear was created with exams, essays, and the carrot of a college diploma at the end of it all. And for a while, I resented this system because I realized the hoops of education, they were mostly a sham. And only once I graduated from college did I develop a love for learning. And if we want an educated citizenry that actually enjoys learning, that knows how to take advantage of all the information available on the internet, we need an alternative. We need to inspire people. Education and learning theorists have proposed that students best remember what they learn when the learning is associated with a strong positive emotion. On the other hand, studies show that stress, boredom, confusion, low motivation, and anxiety can individually and more profoundly in combination interfere with learning. Now, not all the time, but stress, boredom, confusion, and anxiety sounds a lot like high school to me. Today's schools have practically become stress incubators, and they condition students to associate learning with unpleasantness. Things like mandated curriculums and the whittling away of things that people enjoy, like the arts and music classes, leaches the creativity out of learning and creates a sterile and stressful environment. Because it values rote memorization over people's ability to take action and to learn for the sake of learning itself. And it's that idea of learning for the sake of learning itself that I want to follow here. And I want to ask, how can we move to a system of inspiration? To start, we have to invert the learning process. Instead of starting with the building blocks and moving towards curiosity, students should start with curiosity and move towards the building blocks. And guided by the light of inspiration, the benefits of memorization, they can become self-evident, and the motivation to learn can come intrinsically. My teachers didn't give inspiration the respect that it continues to deserve. Too often they dove straight into the test material before they sparked a flame of desire within us. One good story is that I still remember learning about the Doppler effect because my junior year astrophysics teacher taught it so well. But had he been like most of my teachers, he would have started his explanation with some kind of formula that looks like this. But instead, he started with a question. He asked, why do sirens have a higher pitch when they're coming towards you and a lower one as they drive away? Turns out the change in pitch reflects the change in the wavelength created by the siren. But he didn't stop there, he kept on rolling with the story. He told us how astrophysicists use this formula to measure how fast the universe is expanding. And together, these stories are so deeply embedded in my mind that I still think of them a decade later whenever I hear an ambulance pass by.
What does all that mean? You have to put it in some context, make up a story, jazz it up a little, maybe find some humor in it.
Humor in calculus?
But if inspiration is so important, why is it just the occasional great teacher who harnesses it? And why don't schools make it part of their educational design? I've thought a lot about this, and I think that the sad truth is that it's just not scalable. For an in-person curriculum to scale, students need to be doing the same thing at the same time. And the individual nature of inspiration makes that impossible. And you know what? Besides, our contemporary model of education comes from the Prussians. And instead of designing a system to produce independent thinkers, they built one to churn out loyal and predictable citizens who would submit to authorities and their bosses. Now, the Prussian system might work if you want to produce factory workers, but if you want to produce inspired learners, you're gonna need another strategy. And luckily, there's an answer to this: entertainment. Schools should embrace entertainment because it lets you scale inspiration. But since entertainment means something different to everybody, let's start with a definition. To engage a person's attention in a way that makes the time pass pleasantly. Like this video, Hopefully you're enjoying yourself and learning something. People who are skeptical of entertainment in school are often conflating entertainment with amusement. Entertainment is not amusement. Different things. Entertainment can be nutritious, but amusement never is. Amusement is defined by distraction. Like candy, it's appealing in the short term, but has few long-term benefits. Usually, when educators criticize entertainment, they're actually talking about amusement. And though the distinction is subtle, it's the difference between an educated citizenry and the dystopia of Huxley's Brave New World. Historically, educators have run away from entertainment because they assume that inevitably it's going to lead to amusement. Throughout my childhood, even I sensed an implicit assumption that learning needed to be boring in order for it to be effective. But humanity has long known that entertainment can be educational. The Greeks knew this intuitively. They wrapped their most important ideas in narratives instead of just sharing them outright. Plays like the Iliad and the Odyssey, they weren't just a form of entertainment. They provided cultural instruction too. That's education. And since they were passed along in speech instead of writing, they had to be memorized and known by heart. And today, in our modern world, the masters of storytelling come from Hollywood and increasingly, YouTube. These creators, these movie makers, they use many of the same tools that the Greeks discovered hundreds of years ago. But now it costs almost nothing to spread top-notch entertainment and education to the entire world. And you know what? Teachers have a responsibility to entertain too. Think about it. Who was your favorite teacher growing up? Well, let me guess. They probably cared about their subject a lot, and when they talked about it, they spoke with excitement and enthusiasm. Because just as a good communicator takes responsibility for making their ideas clear, a good teacher takes responsibility for inspiring their students. The physicist Richard Feynman comes to mind for me, and he's revered not just for winning awards like the Nobel Prize, but simply for making physics come alive for so many people. He was a great teacher, and it's no surprise that one of the most popular videos about him on YouTube has the words fun and imagine in the title. And guess what? Watching him speak, watching him lecture is entertaining. It's nearly impossible to watch one of his videos and not feel a magnetic urge to study physics. And from Feynman, we've learned what humanity has always known, but many schools have now forgotten, that learning begins with inspiration. And for a video on another master educator, check out my video about Steven Pinker and what your writing says about who you are.